What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Happy Skews Day to you. It is February 18th, 2025. We're coming to you from oh so slightly in the past. It's 1:01 p.m. on the left coast as we sit here to record this. You'll see it in like 4 short hours. Thanks for joining us. I'm Trey. That's Mark. How you doing, Mark?
Pretty good, yeah. It's one continue to have it. One of the every week it's like, oh, this is the dumbest week in American history. Then it just keeps getting dumber. But I'm sure it'll get even dumber by the time the show drops at 5 o'clock. Somehow, a couple of quick Doge competence updates before we get to the show. Last week, the Defense Department was, quote, sent scrambling after Doge publicly posted classified information on the federal agency that handles U.S. surveillance satellites.
Nice.
Yeah, so if you just want to know where our spy satellites are, you can just Google it. Yes, apparently. The Trump administration also, they fired a bunch of people that handle the safety of nuclear weapons, and that realized they wanted to rehire them, but they'd forgotten to keep their they had turned off their email addresses and had no other way to contact them.
Right. They had their government email. They sent an email to that government email that said you're fired. Then they just deleted that email and were like, oh, we don't have a phone number or nothing. We don't know how to find these guys.
I imagine that if they're panicking trying to rehire them, they're it's like, okay, I guess like this is just nuclear missiles are going to explode in their silos unless we can find the email addresses for these people.
Yeah, those are NNSA people, which is it's a semi-autonomous sub-agency to the Department of Energy, which is where I used to work. Obviously, we had some NNSA people in Oak Ridge where I was stationed at. And a lot of those, but they're the one. The Department of Energy technically has stewardship of the nuclear weapons, the whole nuclear weapons complex, but really it's the NNSA that does it. And I guess these guys didn't realize that or know that the Doge guys. I mean, but also the NNSA, they're unsurprisingly and reassuringly, they're fucking hardcore. They have all these different separate rules that we didn't have about. I think it's called the Human Reliability Program. Anybody that works directly with the nukes, it's just like a background check type thing on steroids. Like they can't do shit. Like they can't even like go to the bar and have a beer or whatever, even when they're not working, like that type of thing. Because they got to be really.
So you're saying
highly competent is what I'm saying, and professional.
You're saying America has warrior monks, but they're computer engineers, kind of.
Yeah, and they're in charge of the nukes and stuff, and it's all taken very, very seriously until these people showed up, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So apparently, they're I guess they're firing everybody who's a quote unquote probationary employee because like they're easier to get rid of according to federal the union contracts or whatever. But you get put on you're a probationary employee when you get promoted or transfer departments. So like these aren't like green new people. Like it turns out if you earned a promotion last year, you fucked yourself into being unemployed.
Right.
But this is the old recurring thing going back to Trump's first administration. Quote, sources told CNN the officials did not seem to know this agency oversees America's nuclear weapons, meaning the Department of Energy.
Yeah.
So it's Rick Perry putting Rick Perry in charge of the Department of Energy because they thought energy equaled oil. And even Rick Perry didn't know he was being put in charge of the nukes. This is just like, God. This last one I wanted to talk about. So, U.S. aid withdrawing from around the world has apparently been extremely chaotic. Like, I read a lawsuit earlier today. This guy, his wife, the stress of getting fired and being in a war-torn area or whatever. Like, she was 8 months pregnant and she started having pregnancy difficulties. And the government said, oh, we're sorry, we can't provide a medevac. And so they had spent, like, this is a kid they really wanted. They'd spent $50,000 in fertility treatments, and like it's not clear whether she's going to lose the baby or not. She's still laid up in a hospital bleeding and stuff. But like, so just the example of how chaotic. We talk about chaos. So another lawsuit filed by USAID employees. This guy detailed his experience trying to get out of Kinshasa in the Congo. They were told to leave their possessions behind amidst the panic. The civil servant who deployed with his wife and 3 kids to Kinshasa, and their mission there was like to develop Congolese capacity to sell cobalt to not capital N, not China. Okay.
Yeah.
The goal, I don't understand the technical. I don't, whatever, whether the goal is worth it or not. But he was told by U.S. Marines to load into a raft with 1 backpack per person. They're escaping on a raft. This is basically the Vietnam airlift, but a cheap version of it. And they had to leave their dog behind. Now, if you're not a dog owner, this is the formula you would designed to create super ISIS. Like, if you force me to leave my dog behind at gunpoint because of some fucking Washington bureaucratic politics, and like my kids are having to leave all their stuff behind, leave with one backpack on a fucking raft, and these are people who've been brought back to America with no place to live and no income. These are our fellow countrymen who volunteered for public service, and yeah.
Well, I've seen some people point out online, like what you just highlighted, that's presumably also happening to a lot of like ex-military people who now have government jobs and everything. People, people that are like, and I don't mean to imply that ex-military people are like unhinged or nothing. I'm just saying that like, it's gonna make a lot of desperate people overnight out of nowhere for no good reason, and some of whom might have the capacity to.
Dude, people are being radicalized about it. That's one reason, like, somebody on the progressive side should figure out a way to grab the microphone and be able to give a message, because people are going to need something to believe in to fix all this, to hold people accountable, and like somebody should lead. Right, as I'm saying. But
Chuck Schumer is the guy, obviously.
Yeah, right. We're talking about him a little bit.
Catching his briefings and stuff, but he's pretty on top of it. But you said that this USA guy was there to develop Congolese capacity to sell cobalt to not China, and that's what a lot of this USAID stuff comes down to, right? A lot of these things have been canceled by them. It's like that mantle is going to be picked up by China and all these other countries, right? It's like a soft power Cold War between us and China, and now we've removed ourselves from it. China's just going to slide right in there very happily. Did you see that list of stuff that Doge themselves put out, all the money they said they'd saved? Like,
they took the real number and multiplied by 10 because they can't add, something like that.
Yeah, it said $486 million to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, including $22 million for inclusive and participatory political processes in Moldova and $21 million for voter turnout in India. And it's like, people read that and see that number and they're like, what kind of bullshit is that? But it's like, that's so clearly a democratic soft power aim to, it's like, instead of doing coups and shit like we used to do, we do stuff like this so we don't have to do those, hopefully. And
and it's still a kind of coup. Like I said,
well, you're right.
They were making, which is
it's
like
coup light.
I'm not even like, but like, I don't know. I don't get into like real politics and how to approach the world as a live, but like,
there's outcomes from this that should hit for these people, is what I'm trying to say, that they don't realize, right? Or it's like they just look at it as just wasteful money. It's like a lot of this stuff, what it goes to is actually shit that is more in line with how y'all think things work. Right. You just don't realize that.
I saw a meme floating around the internet. Like some Doge supporter had made like a Mad Men thing. It's like what Don Draper's pitching. It's like, what if we used USAID to establish right-wing governments? And somebody was like, who's going to tell these motherfuckers? Yeah. but I was like, I was texting you about that podcast I was listening to about the Challenger disaster and the two. Because you and I are, we're really into Challenger, the Big Bird part of it and all that shit. It's like, so there's two guys who designed the O-ring who saw the explosion coming and tried desperately to stop the launch, but couldn't get anybody to listen to them. And they spent the rest of their lives like being depressed and guilty about it. And the way it worked is like they told everybody it was going to explode. It was like 20 degrees too cold for this rubber O-ring to like hold up. It was going to freeze and give way or whatever. And what they did was the NASA administrators kicked everyone out of the room who knew what they were talking about so they could move forward with the launch. And what if the government did that with the lives of 330 million people instead of 7? And you essentially have what's happening right now.
Yep. Well, reassuring y'all as always. Thanks for being here. This is Weekly Skews. Before we continue, of course, a couple quick announcements. Come see me on the road, please. TreyCrowder.com. I got Carolinas coming up this weekend, and then Florida after that, Minneapolis, and then the Northeast, and a whole bunch more in the near future. TreyCrowder.com. Also, if you enjoy this program and would like to show your support, you can do so by signing up on Patreon, weeklyskews.com/more, or just go to Patreon and search for my name. Either way works. $5 a month to get you access to 2 full-length bonus episodes of this same show you're watching right now every single month. And sometimes we do Q&As on there even, so, get a little interactive action and just some more of this show if you like it for only $5. So consider signing up on Patreon. Now, as for the show tonight, we're going to be talking about Eric Adams and all the patriotic heroism under his belt that he's been dealing with lately and trying to be the true hero that New York needs. And the long line of very impressive mayors they've had in the Big Apple, Eric Adams stands out, and a lot of other dumb shit with Doge and Elon along the way, beginning with the Daily Dumbass. Matt, graphic, please. Tonight's DD, the Doge kids for accidentally melting stolen Fort Knox gold when their Cybertruck spontaneously combust.
All right, so this morning to talk about going for the gold, Elon Musk and Doge setting their sights on the country's largest gold reserve, Fort Knox in Kentucky, as its own senator reveals that $425 billion of a gold supply doesn't even get a yearly review. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul joins us now.
So, do you see the safety report that Cybertrucks the catch on fire 7 times more than the Ford Pinto, which got taken off the market for catching on fire? That's funny.
No, but I know the Pinto is legendary or infamous.
Right.
I guess is a better way to put it for that. 7 times worse seems pretty bad.
Seems like we should have a government look into it. Wonder if anybody works there anymore. So there's layers of this gold thing, which is floating around the right-wing internet, and Rand Paul always calls for the Federal Reserve to be audited. I guess it hasn't been audited in a long time, which feels a little bit weird. But Rand Paul's dad was also going on about auditing Fort Knox, back when he was in Congress in like the '90s and shit. So the layers of this go like this. So like Ron and Rand Paul come from like the gold bug wingnutter part of the right, where they think we should go back to the gold standard because paper, money is a scheme by the Jews or something. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, right.
Okay.
So the Jews don't traffic in gold? That seems odd for, what I've always heard these people say about the Jews. Figured they'd be all over that.
So he was making this noise, and then it flooded in Kentucky.
Yeah, I was there. Right. Fucking sucked, by the way. I was fine. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't hit. It sucked.
So then you see the wingnuts say they're going on about their weather machine bullshit that we go to in a second, and Elon Musk is basically trying to stage manage a crossover event between the John Bircher Society stuff that Rand Paul's up to, and the wingnut faction talking about the weather machines, and he's saying that Fort Knox needs to be audited because maybe the gold absolutely isn't there anymore. Let me quote, Musk tweeted, quote, "Who is confirming the gold wasn't stolen from Fort Knox? Maybe it's there, maybe it's not." Which I'm not sure if they know the gold's heavy. Maybe somebody took it. I don't know, but I know that it seems fine. Nothing's happened.
Right.
If all the gold got stolen in 1998, like what the fuck? What happened? Like, I don't know. So
that is a good point. If it's just been gone the whole time, maybe we didn't even need it because it seems like it sort of worked out just fine.
Seems like it just proved the Paul family's hypothesis that we need to go back to the gold standard. So, so this is the kind of memes that floated around right-wing Twitter yesterday. Okay, Mila Joy, who's an influencer who spends most of her time online, like beefing with Ilhan Omar, says all this talk of auditing Fort Knox, and all of a sudden, all that area is completely flooded. If only our conspiracy theorists. Okay. So, and then Candace Taylor, who we talked about a lot when she ran for governor of Georgia a couple of years ago, whoever did this is the blood of a 7-year-old child on their hands. So they're accusing. So I thought they fired the whole deep state already. Who got the weather machine? The deeper state? What the fuck are we talking about?
Still the Jews, I think. Actually, his name's Shlomo Goldberg. Actually, he's a fan of the show. I called him on Saturday because I had shows that night in Kentucky where it was raining, and I said, if you don't mind, could you turn down the flood machine for just long enough for me to do my shows, and you can turn it back up? And he was like, of course. And then so he did, and so I appreciate. Shout out Shlomo doing good work over there with the big liberal hurricane weather generator that we've been working on. But yeah, no, you're right. It's like but they're going to keep doing this where it's like, y'all are in now. You've cleared it all out, haven't you? Isn't that the narrative? So anytime something like this happens, it's like you can't just keep saying, "Oh, that's interesting. Wonder who's behind this." It's like you fucking fired them all. They're all gone. You are you're the deep state now. So it's you. If the deep state is doing something, that means it's you because you're the deep state now, right? I mean, I don't get how you can have it both ways.
If you want to be comfortable about how stupid these people are, so my question to them is, if you have a machine that controls the weather, why do you need the Ocean's 11 Fort Knox? You don't need gold.
Right.
You're past needing money for power now. You control the fucking weather. I don't understand how So, I want to talk about some other phone money stuff happening right now. So, Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who's super popular among the Trump right. How much do you know about him, Trey?
I mean, I knew that they had a wild son of a bitch down there that got elected in their most recent elections, because I remember we talked about it because of how, it's alarming when lunatics around the world get elected after, following our obsession with Trump.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the specifics of what all he actually did, though.
Well, his sister is his first lady. He has 5 concurrent clones of his dead dog.
Nice.
That he named the same thing. He used to be a libertarian economics professor who wants to legalize the sale of human organs. Like you can sell your. The idea is that you can sell you. Why interfere with the free market if a person wants to sell their own organs? But I imagine the next step to that is some enterprising entrepreneur is like, what if I sold other people's organs?
Yeah, well, if I harvested organs, that sounds fun too. Yeah, right.
So what if we legalize waking up in a bathtub with no kidneys, basically?
The utopia that capitalism has long promised, right there.
Yes.
Get ahead by selling yours and others' kidneys.
Yeah, so he's got the kind of ideas that a lot of people in Trump world want to copy. He's always partying at Mar-a-Lago. I think it was at Trump's inauguration. So right now he's in a bit of political trouble because he launched a meme coin called Libra. There were immediately over $280 million disappeared from 75,000 individual traders.
So hot right now, these meme coins.
Yeah. So people are calling for his impeachment, maybe jailing over fraud. Other countries still put their presidents in prison. It must be nice. So it's not clear where the money went. He says that he was just the face of the meme coin, like the Hawk Tuah girl of Argentina, basically. The good news here is, let me quote here, few Argentines were financially affected by the coin's crash, with the country's fintech chamber saying analysis of X posts suggested most Libra buyers were in the United States and Asia. So he just mainly fucked Americans with this, so good for him, because these are probably huge, these are the kind of people who deserve to be taken by these scams, because they're trying to participate in these scams. So the plot twist here, the connection to American politics, other than Trump World loving Javier, is the guy who orchestrated this. His name's Hayden Davis, and he was also behind the launch of Melania Trump's meme coin, which immediately soared to $2 billion in market cap, but then crashed 90% immediately. Throw up this picture of Hayden. He did an interview with the same guy we played a clip from. He looks like a space virgin. What the fuck do you describe this look?
Space virgin. It's perfect. I can't do better than that. Space virgin is perfect. So yeah, these are the people at the levers of power, man. This is who the whole world is being controlled by now. Is these guys, various types of, the meek have inherited the earth, and it's well. Yeah, in one form anyway. But
I don't know where he's from. His accent sounded. I would guess he's either Canadian or American. But yeah, so I listened to an interview he did with CoffeeZilla, who's the same crypto influencer who we played a clip from, where he interviewed somebody with a Hawk Tuah meme coin crash. And he confessed to 7 different securities violations. So he'll be under a jail in about 15 minutes if America still has laws applicable to rich people, which we don't. But speaking of which,
right. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about Eric Adams. Eric Adams cannot take a pinch, dog. He's not a stand-up guy. He will not do his time standing up. He standing on his head. You do not do crimes with Eric Adams because he will not stand up under questioning. That's what we learned. So the mayor of America's largest city, who's basically got dead to rights for taking bribes from a couple different foreign governments. The Trump administration has decided to leave him in office and use the threat of charges to blackmailing him into carrying out their agenda, mostly dealing with immigration so far. And they did it all out in the fucking open, okay?
Yeah.
This is the kind of scandal. This is exactly what Nixon got forced out for, except 10 times worse. I
remember us covering the stuff when it broke with him, when the charges came out and all this stuff. It's like, oh, that's not good. And then, the fact that it just seems to be the clip we're going to show in a minute. It to me is one of the wilder clips we've shown in a minute. I mean, I know everything's wild now, but this is truly something else because it's just like you said. There's very openly blackmailing or bribing or however you want to put it the mayor of New York City to do their bidding, or they'll throw him in jail, and it's like everybody just knows it. They're just doing it in the broad daylight. And it's wild.
So we'll play this clip in a second, but I want to mention, like, the New York Times reported that acting Deputy AG Emile Bove coached Mayor Adams' attorneys on what to argue in their filings in order to get the charges dismissed. They told him what to say, which is basically that the prosecution was a political prosecution by the Biden administration because he was complaining too much about immigrants, which is what Trump said, basically the same thing the DOJ was doing to him. So basically trying to use Trumpy language if he wanted to get the charges dropped. And that all led to, no one's even, in none of their documents they filed to get the charges dropped, do they even pretend that he didn't do it.
Right.
None of them say he didn't do it. Because they don't want to say he didn't do it because they want to have the anvil hanging over his head that they can refile if he doesn't do exactly what they want. Mm-hmm. And that led to this appearance that Trey mentioned on Fox and Friends in the Morning or whatever their dumb Fox and Friends with Trump's border czar Tom Homan, where Eric Adams is basically sitting on his lap being his ventriloquist dummy, except he's not talking. Here we go.
Right.
This.
Doesn't come true. If he doesn't come true, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So, doesn't come true.
Yeah. So pathetic, dude. He's just sitting there on the couch with the mayor, being like, "Yeah, if he doesn't do what I say, I'll come back and I'll, put my foot in his ass until he does what I told him to do." And he's just sitting there like chuckling the whole time. It's like. Absolutely shameless.
I would rather go to.
I know.
Even if,
me too.
I would rather go to jail than do this.
I know.
Like,
I agree. I could not handle having to go through something like that publicly. I really couldn't. Like, it's gross. It's so gross.
The thing that drives me crazy about, I mean, a lot of things drive me crazy about this kind of stuff, but like, Trump people can't just do something shitty. They feel morally obligated to rub your face in it. Is immorally obligated a thing? I don't fucking know.
But it should be immorally obligated because that does describe them perfectly. You're right. It's like, yeah, they can't just. It's from the top down, dude. Like they can't just take a win or whatever. They gotta be real shitty about it the whole way. They're sore winners and losers. They're just sore about everything all the time.
And the deal is basically to deputize NYPD to manpower to do immigration enforcement. And what, like, you sent, was it the Dallas PD has announced they're going to refuse to do this? You sent it to me yesterday, right?
Yeah, Dallas PD is, not going to cooperate with ICE or whatever.
And I was like, well, of course, because one, cities typically, NYPD is its own thing because it has a budget bigger than most foreign countries' militaries. But, like, most police departments don't have the resources to focus on immigration enforcement. Plus, it's a bad idea because you can't police communities where no one will talk to you or call 911 or or be a witness in criminal trials. So, like, it's self-sabotaging their mission. Besides the fact that local business owners who employ a bunch of immigrants are going to be calling to scream at the mayor and the police chief when you start kidnapping their employees. Right. So they also want to open an ICE office on Rikers Island or something. So to make a glide path to deport people that get arrested for loitering in public or whatever. So to refresh people, because we talked about it when it happened, what the charges actually were. He was indicted by a federal grand jury in September on 1 count of bribery and 4 counts of campaign finance fraud, and charges he gave favorable treatment to campaign donors connected to the Turkish government. Basically, he took free flights on Istanbul Airlines to let the Turkish government get around New York City fire codes or something. And he also took a bunch of straw donations from foreign nationals, which was illegal, in order to get matching funds from the city of New York. So he's basically did paperwork crimes to steal millions of dollars from New York City taxpayers. Okay, and he did that. Like, was the funniest example? He flew through Istanbul on Turkish Airlines to connect to go to South America. To save,
I remember that because at the time we were like, again, similar to what we said earlier. It's like I'd rather just pay the fucking regular ticket to get that than do that. Fly halfway across the world to get back in this direction just because it was free and I was getting it as part of some political scheme I'd cooked up. It's like I'd literally just rather not even do that.
Right.
Than jeopardize myself in exchange for something like that. Like
you're risking federal prison to spend 18 extra hours on a flight.
Right.
It's fucking stupid.
Why? I know it's crazy. I don't know.
So after this, he did a live stream. He won't do a press conference because he won't talk to anybody, but he did a live stream where he basically gloated about getting off, and he quoted the Bible, specifically Psalms 34:1. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. Bro, a gun should be in your mouth. I don't know, this man, I don't hate to sound like a fucking samurai, but this man has no honor.
Right,
like,
clearly.
Bring back seppuku. like, think about like for doing the crime, you get caught for it, you refuse to resign, you stay in office, and you sell out your own constituents who you already robbed in order to fuck them over harder for shit they didn't vote for. They did not elect a MAGA guy mayor for a reason, and it's like backstabbing all the way through. Like, I expect self-serving and self-dealing in politics. The system's kind of premised upon people being greedy and ambitious.
Yeah.
Part of the problem now is that Congress isn't ambitious enough, right?
Right.
They're not standing up for themselves. But you're not supposed to be greedy and ambitious this way. You're supposed to be greedy and ambitious and fighting for your constituents and standing up to higher powers, right? This is the opposite of this is the opposite kind of ambition and greed he's supposed to have. He's supposed to be wanting to run for president as a Democrat, not converting to being a Republican so he can stay out of prison. Okay.
Why does it seem like that doesn't ever happen in the other direction? By the way, I mean, there's maybe there's. Well, I mean, I'm sure they would claim that people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger or whatever did that, but from my perspective, all they did was just be sane about treason and stuff. But you know what I mean? Like, we always have Democrat fucking Manchin and Sinema and fucking Fetterman and this dude, and it's like, it's just what. I don't know. I guess because being corrupt is sort of inherently Republican or whatever. And getting into politics makes you corrupt, like you were saying, or it attracts corrupt people. It's a chicken and egg thing.
We're going to get to it, but there are actual people acting on principle here in the mass resignations that happen, and those are principled Republicans, right?
Yeah.
So, like, the only heroes in this story so far are Republicans.
Right.
So it's a little bit. It's all very, very weird. So also in the documents they filed to drop the charges, they leave open the room to refile. So again, this is just about having a gun to his head. They haven't let him off. They're being like, "You do what we want. We're going to put you back in jail," and he's going to keep giving them bullets to put in their gun because there's so much rinky-dink corruption in Adams, New York. We talked about them like people connected to his administration, like, you know, taking bribes from bar owners for liquor licenses. Some police people had to resign for like paying their subordinates extra overtime pay for getting blowjobs. This story happened this week. When the quote here, this headline: New York City nonprofit founder indicted for taking millions in kickbacks under city-funded COVID housing program. This guy named Julio Medina, who's the executive director and founder of Exodus Transitional Community, which is a city-funded nonprofit that aids people released from jail. He took $2.5 million in cash kickbacks, plus other gifts, including home and luxury car loan payments, to funnel tens of millions of public funds to two corrupt business people. A few of those are connected to Adams. Here's a picture, if you want to throw it up, Matt. They got it on camera. And if you think New York City corruption looks any different than a guy in a ponytail and an Adidas track jacket sliding a cash that's not even in an envelope across the table, you poor sweet summer child.
Yeah, you know, I think sometimes, I mean, I'm kidding. Let me preface this. I wouldn't have done it anyway. But, like, I used to work in procurement and contracts for the federal government. And, like, it was beaten into us from the very beginning. It's like, dude, we couldn't let a prospective vendor or contractor like buy lunch and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, if we went on you couldn't do nothing. Like, they hammered it into you. It's like, you can't take nothing from them, even the fucking the appearance of any kind of impropriety. And it's like, now it's like, if I'd just been 10, 15 years younger and if I was doing all this in like Trump, I mean, there wouldn't be a government, I guess. I wouldn't have been able to get a job in the first place. But in the current landscape, it's like I could have had boats and all kinds of sweet stuff, because it's just fine.
Yeah.
You can just do all that. It seems to be encouraged, if anything. So I really missed out.
Yeah, if you'd worked in Trump's DOA, you could have taken like a bass boat to give a nuclear weapon to, like, I don't know, Dubai or something. Mm-hmm. So this whole operation was spearheaded by Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove. Like I said, there was a picture of this guy, Matt. So he looks like this looks like exactly the kind of guy who would do this. Looks like the gene spliced Count Chocula with the Mucinex mascot. How old do you think this guy is, Trey?
52.
He was born in 81 or 82, so he's like 42, 43, 44.
Wow.
Yeah, evil takes a toll, buddy.
Yeah.
He was Trump's personal attorney, representing him through a lot of like his Mueller stuff, and I guess now he still is Trump's personal attorney, except he works for the DOJ. And after a bunch of people resigned, who we'll get to, he assembled the few people left in the DOJ's public corruption prosecutor's office and gave them an hour to find someone who would sign the Derek Adams dismissal. It basically put him in the room to do a prisoner's dilemma, which is not how you do a prisoner's dilemma. You're supposed to have them in separate rooms, but whatever.
It's like a key component of it, I thought.
Right. So they found one guy to do it. His reasoning was that he's about to retire anyway, so his honor doesn't matter anymore, and therefore, like, he'd give them time to find other jobs. Now, these are people that work. All they got to do is make 2 phone calls and be working at a white shoe law firm in like a week and a half. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be hard for these people to find a job, especially with all the litigation that's going to be happening, with people needing to sue the federal government over contracts being canceled. These people are going to be making bank, dude. You do not need to protect them. And also, like, I was reading like this piece about how people end up being fascists, end up being Nazis. And one of the way you do it is you rationalize, I'm actually protecting a larger amount of people by throwing this smaller group of people under a bus. Uh-huh. And so what he did was threw the citizens of New York under a bus and all the immigrants who live in New York under a bus to save a couple weeks of employment for people that are planning to leave anyway. Right. And you don't need to do that, man.
Right. So this dude's rationale was basically like, if one of us doesn't do this shady thing, we all gonna be fired. Mm-hmm. I'm already leaving soon. My career is basically already over. These colleagues of mine, they're not in that situation. Either we all get fired, or if I do it, it'll save them, and that's why he did it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the guy who represents Adams, the lawyer, his name's Alex Spiro, who's a fascinating character. He's the same lawyer who represents Elon Musk and a bunch of stuff, if you want to be conspiratorial about it. But Spiro also represents Jay-Z, Mr. Beast, Alec Baldwin, Aaron Hernandez, he represented him in his murder trial, and Robert Kraft. So basically he represents everybody, rich people engaged in a variety of enterprises. In Elon's case, securities fraud and calling a cave diver a pedophile. In Aaron Hernandez's case, murder. In Robert Kraft's case, getting a hand job.
Yeah, all over the place.
Yeah.
Varied results too. There, you know what I mean? It's like
varied results. But he had not only got Eric Adams off last week, but Jay-Z, he was representing Jay-Z in his sexual assault civil suit, and that case got dropped. So he basically Spiro basically won the week. Dude, like, he also represented 21 Savage in his immigration case, and as a DA in Manhattan, he prosecuted the dating game serial killer. So like, I want to watch the Alex Spiro biopic. He's only like in his early 40s. He's like basically OJ's legal team all rolled into one.
These high-powered lawyers like that are wild, because it seems like a lot of the ones at the top, it's always like this. Like I did a corporate gig at a lawyers convention last year, and the guy they were honoring as like lawyer of the year, whatever, was, I don't know if currently, but either had very recently been or was literally at the time. He was both Hunter Biden and I think Matt Gaetz's attorney at the same time, and it repped like Bill Clinton in the past and all these other people too. And it's like, you know, once you get into like a position where you become a go-to in these situations and your phone starts ringing for that, then you just rack them up, dude, over and over and over again. It's wild how that works.
Yeah, Spiro charges $2,025 an hour. That's what he bills, and the 25 just made me laugh.
Yeah,
like, just get lunch on us, Alex. So let's talk about the resignations for a minute. Last time I counted, 7 people resigned after refusing to, file these documents, letting Eric Adams off. The first one she was the acting head of the Southern District of New York. Her name's Danielle R. Sassoon. And then the next 2 were Kevin O'Driscoll and John Keller. They came basically come in rapid succession to Thursday afternoon when they all just refused to fucking do this shit. Sassoon is a committed movement conservative. Like she was appointed by Donald Trump to be the acting U.S. U.S. attorney for the Southern District just a couple weeks ago, just when Trump took office.
Right, that's like the gig, isn't it, in this ecosystem?
Southern SDNY is like the major leagues of being a U.S. attorney, because that's where you prosecute stuff. All the because it has Manhattan, so basically every financial malfeasance case is going to end up on their desk. Sassoon said she wrote that the mayor's lawyer said, quote, repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to assist with the department's enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. If you throw up this footnote here from this legal brief, she says that they had a meeting to talk about dropping the charges, and, quote, Mr. Bove admonished a member of my team who took notes during that meeting and directed the collection of those notes at the meeting's conclusion.
What does that remind you of?
The Stringer Bell meme?
Yeah,
Are you
from the what?
is you taking notes on a criminal fucking conspiracy.
Yes, exactly.
But they did a lot of that in the first Trump. So they've learned at least to get rid of the notes. So like I said, she joined the Southern. She got promoted by Trump, but she's been in the Southern District since 2016. She's a graduate of Harvard and Yale. She clerked for Antonin Scalia as a member of the Federalist Society. She's not some lib, okay?
Right.
I'd tell you the fourth person who resigned rather than do this wasn't in the office that day. They were in the hospital giving birth. And they called a reporter in the middle of labor to tell them, just so you know, I'm not in today, so I can't do it, but I'm fucking resigning too. Fuck this shit. The next guy to quit, his name was Hagen Scotton, okay? And if you're going to want your kid to become a conservative attorney through nominative determinism, name him something like Hagen Scotton. Mm-hmm. He'll definitely wear a bow tie and be in court arguing that actually the Federalist Papers mean that women can't have driver's licenses, but they do have principles, they're just not ours, okay? So he wrote this scathing fucking resignation letter to, I think it was, I forget if it was to the judge or to Emile Beau, but it ended with, I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to follow your emotion, but it was never going to be me. Bars, dude.
Yeah. See, this happened a lot last time too, where it's like, I don't know where they keep finding people, period. Them being the Trump administration, it's like they just run through because anybody with any shred of integrity or principles or anything, they quit, they leave eventually, or they get run off for having them. And it's like, that's alarming because the only thing that's left is Team Crazy, which is part of their whole plan this time to begin with anyway. But it's like at a certain point, when do they like run out of people? I don't know. It's just wild how they got to be pretty deep into the bench already, I would think, with a lot of these things. And it's like,
who's going to work there? Like,
right,
that's the reason they're using 5 Doge kids to do the digital part of the coup is because they don't have anybody else to they trust they can hire.
Right.
So like, talk about like Hagen Scott and like if they care about anything, how they're shooting themselves in the foot. Let me read you his resume real quick. He graduated the absolute top of his class at Harvard Law. He got 2 Bronze Stars fighting in the global war on terror, I think in the Marines. He's a law clerk for both Chief Justice John Roberts and then D.C. Circuit Judge Brett Kavanaugh. He's the kind of guy in olden times they'd be grooming to run for president.
right, yeah.
Not anymore. So think about but it was never going to be me. All right. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about like Democrats here outside of Kathy Hochul and maybe Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, but like Dems are continuing to have this argument internally about whether the problem is messaging versus policies, but the problem is both express weakness, right? Like they do milk toast shit sold with the vibe of a Cialis ad. Meanwhile, these movement conservative lawyers are writing resignation letters that sound like they sing Christmas Day speech.
Mm-hmm.
Because they care about stuff. I can't figure it out.
I know. I don't. It just feels like another version of the same problem that they've had every step of the way for so long. Whereas it's like, how is this the best foot that you're putting forward? You know what I mean? Like, at what? I don't know.
It's like. Because we're talking about, it's not like it's not that Democrats aren't fighting back or not saying shit. It's that it's not breaking through because they're not picking actual conflicts. There's no legislative conflicts to pick right now because they're not trying to pass any laws, and they didn't have the votes to stop any appointments. But like, here's a fight you could pick: is by Kathy Hochul has the authority under the Constitution of New York to remove him as mayor, and make her case why. She has not done it yet. She had a meeting with Al Sharpton today where she basically tried to get Al Sharpton's permission to fire Mayor Adams, basically. And I don't understand power in this country at all. So Al Sharpton, who spent Sunday night at the SNL 50th anniversary taping, is now the guy who has to bless the firing of the mayor of New York. So Sharpton said, because the judge hasn't approved dismissing the charges yet, he basically says they're awaiting that decision. The hearing's supposed to happen tomorrow, I think. But I don't understand what waiting does, because either he does let them dismiss the charges and the mayor gets off with it under crooked circumstances, or he doesn't dismiss the indictment, in which case the mayor of New York is still indicted for corruption. both are bad. Which outcome means you want to fire him? Like if he remains indicted, you leave him in power.
Right. Right.
So make it make sense, Trey. She's already backtracking, but at a press conference last week, she said she would not use her power to remove the mayor. Now, not to be all hypocritical here, we shit all over Ron DeSantis for removing public officials using the same power in Florida, but he did it for corrupt purposes.
Right.
What you're doing, why you're doing something matters is important.
Yes, of course.
Right.
Context fucking matters.
Right. So so the idea that well, we made fun of Ron DeSantis for doing it, so we can't do it. It's like, no, you're supposed to remove corrupt people. You're not supposed to remove people for being elected by voters you disagree with.
Right. It's also like another version of it that's been happening lately is like I've seen a lot of people with concerns be like, now Democrats care about egg prices and stuff like that, and it's like, no, the point is we're making fun of you for not. You know what I mean? It's like we're making fun of the shit that you did and how disingenuous it was and trying to shove it in your face, and you're too stupid to get that, so you think that it's like, it's just that yeah, context matters. The reason people do things matters. You have to think about more than just the action itself or the thing that a person says. You have to think about, the situation in which they say or do it. But a lot of people don't want to do that. Or they never get that context in the first place, But anyway.
Eric Adams made a handshake deal to ship a bunch of New Yorkers to Gitmo in exchange for his own freedom. And you're like, well, what are you going to do?
Right.
Even though I have the power to do something about it, right? Let me read a quote here. It is my hope that after, this issue, that there's more attention now back on the minutiae of running the city. She's agreeing with Trump's take that now Mayor Adams, without the distraction of being prosecuted for his brazen corruption, can focus on his job. She said that Adams should be doubling down on regaining New Yorkers' trust. Double down on regaining their trust after selling them out second time after being caught selling them out the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. These politicians, I'm talking about the feckless wing of the Democratic Party that somehow finds itself always in leadership.
Right. Yeah.
They keep telling themselves that being lazy and cowardly is always the politically savvy move. I don't understand how they get there. And Al Adams wants revenge on the city for hating him. You fucking moron. He has the approval rating of scabies.
Right.
She's also throwing her own career under the bus for this shit. Here's a protest in front of City Hall in New York yesterday. Look at this drawing of Hochul that your constituents are walking around with. This is like an incompetent or mean courtroom sketch of Cruella de Vil.
Yeah, they've been kind of bringing it with some of those protest signs that I've seen lately. I mean, I guess it's confirmation bias. Is that the right bias? The ones that I see on the internet are the ones that people have hit with. But I've seen a lot of good. Saw somebody made. They took Elon and JD and Trump and put those little like musketeer hats on them. So the three Musk, like Elon Musketeers, all for them, none for all. Thought that was pretty good. They taped a Hitler mustache over Trump's face. Not the most original, but I'm just a lot of people have been working on these protest signs, doing good stuff.
Yeah, people are protesting Cybertruck Tesla dealerships, which is probably the most effective thing you can do right now, considering who's actually in charge of shit. So, talk about feckless as a Democratic leadership. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the Senate Minority Leader and the House Minority Leader, just happen to be from New York City. And they haven't said shit about Eric Adams needing to resign, the last I checked anyway, which had been 4 days. AOC has, a bunch of other city officials have, because he can't fucking govern. 4 deputy mayors resigned, trying to put pressure on Kathy Hochul to remove him because he can't run the city. Schumer and Jeffries being a part of the same corrupt New York City political machine that created Eric Adams is a problem. And the fact they won't even it's popular among your own constituents to say fuck Eric Adams. They won't do it because they'd rather go to the same party as him again.
I know. I mean, is that what it is though? I mean, is that because that's what I don't really get is like, what's the upside of doing this? Is it just like some kind of Democrat version of a thin blue line thing or something? Because it's funny. Well, it's funny for them to have that now when it's just open corruption or whatever, because I feel like, before, I don't know. I mean, I guess it was happening. I don't know. I don't feel like that's always happened. You know what I mean?
Right. So let me tell you what happens if Adams resigned or is removed. Okay, if he's removed, New York City's public advocate, a guy named Jermaine Williams, will become the acting mayor. He's a self-described Democratic socialist. In 2018, Williams challenged incumbent Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul in the Democratic primary for Lieutenant Governor. He ran a platform of anti-corruption, affordable housing, and criminal justice reform. Does any of his platforms sound like anything that would hit for Hochul, Jeffries, or Schumer?
Schumer, no.
No.
Oh my God.
He also,
it's so frustrating that that's what the answer is. It's like there's an actual progressive who would end up taking this guy's place, and they'd rather just see it all burn and help Trump out than let that happen.
What if people like it?
Yeah,
what if people like it?
Yeah, right.
So,
dude.
and also the fact he ran a primary campaign against Hochul when she was lieutenant governor is pretty telling to me. If you don't think these people would let New York City burn out of a personal grudge against a guy who dared to challenge them in an election, then you don't understand these people at all.
Yeah.
So, and if you comparing their messages about this shit, Kathy Hochul's like, well, maybe this is a chance for him to regain their trust versus Hagen Scott and being like, I want to fucking see you in hell. Like, which one is a more compelling message to rouse people to follow you? I will see you in hell versus I will see you in arbitration provided you find my terms agreeable. No worries if not.
Yeah. No, it's a good, I mean, dude, it's a great point. Like, they're just, I mean, I said that even about like Trump after his inauguration speech or whatever, so much of what they're like, it's making us lose sleep at night, but they're fucking crushing for their people, though. For like, you know, and that's wild as hell to me. But they're like, they've got them riled up in a good way. Like they're fucking on board, and it's hitting. And then look at what's happening. Look what the resistance looks like. It's Chuck Schumer holding an avocado with his fucking reading glasses at the end of his nose or whatever. It's, you know, it sucks.
It's like, I don't think they get that, like, being brave is its own inspiration. Like, it's not so matter what the poll tested wording of what you say, as opposed to, like, it's just like seeing somebody throw a punch is like, hey, that's what leadership feels like. So there's a whole thing happening on the internet where, like, Bill Kristol, the guy neocon who used to write for the Weekly Standard, was a big George W. Bush supporter, is like hardcore anti-Trump, and I see a bunch of people saying like, "Oh, he's to the left of the Dems now." He's not to the left of the Dems. That's not what he's doing. He just, like, say what you will about the tenets of the people who lied to invade Iraq, but at least it's an ethos.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He believes in American greatness. He believes in it stupidly in ways that got a lot of people killed, but he does believe in shit, and I'm not sure that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries really do. And it's a real difficult, like, reality to confront, but somebody has to confront, because these people need to get the fuck out of the way if they're not going to lead, okay? Because, like, it's not just immigration that like, obviously it's the first thing that Eric Adams is going to betray New York on, and that seems to be the thing people care about the least for whatever fucking inhumane reason. But, like, let me quote here from the story about abortion politics. New York on Thursday rejected a request from Louisiana to extradite a doctor who was charged with prescribing abortion pills to a pregnant minor in the Deep South state, setting up a potential test of laws that protect physicians who prescribe such medications with state bans. Kathy Hochul said she will not honor Louisiana's request to arrest and send the doctor to Louisiana after she was charged with violating the state's anti-abortion law. She sent a notice to law enforcement in New York that instructed them not to cooperate with out-of-state warrants for such charges. Okay, Kathy, right now you have the doctor in New York. What do you do if Eric Adams obeys a DOJ command to have NYPD put this lady on a fucking private flight to a black site in Austin, and you lose custody of her? What then, Kathy?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
is this is a New York doctor who gave these drugs to a Louisiana pregnant teenager
through the mail.
Through the mail, right? Yeah. Damn, dude, that's freaky. And
So,
yeah,
like,
that doing that under the assumption that they're in New York and New York won't play that Louisiana bullshit. But if he's under the thumb of, you know,
I said Austin, I just said Baton Rouge. Sorry, I was thinking Texas, but yeah,
Baton Rouge. But yeah,
so,
that's. I mean, that's a good.
If they start doing extraordinary rendition flights from blue states after, like, co-opting, because like so. Dropping legit charges in exchange for cooperation is one element of this, but what happens when we start dummying up fake prosecutions?
Yeah, right.
of equally cowardly big city mayors. Because another lady at DOJ resigned today because she said she was asked to open a corrupt investigation with no evidence. That's the next part of this plan that starts. So,
man, it really does just keep getting dumber and worse each and every week, day, hour, minute, even.
And they really are banking upon there not being an equally I saw a guy. He's saying I'm basically a New Deal liberal, but now I'm convinced we need a Vladimir Lenin.
Right.
So when a populist left winger takes control and uses the DOJ for equally corrupt means to go after Musk and Trump, is there anybody who's going to actually be principled enough to say we ought not do that? Because I don't give a shit anymore.
I'm about to say it won't be me if that happens. I had a hard time seeing that in this version of America ever coming to pass, but if it did, I mean, I'll probably be popping bottles, to be honest with you. So.
Right. So there's nothing Eric Adams was even without the indictments and stuff already probably would have been the worst mayor in New York history. You're talking about a guy who was closing the libraries to hire new cops. New York City doesn't need them. I run he ran on ending solitary confinement in Rikers and then amped it up. He just basically lied to win an election, misrepresenting who he was. He was a career Republican cop who pretended to be a social justice advocate to win the mayor's race by a small plurality. So I mentioned Nixon earlier. What all the shit Nixon did, he was eventually forced out for firing the top 3 lawyers of the DOJ after refused to fire a special prosecutor who wouldn't drop a subpoena for the Oval Office tapes that Nixon had said all the crooked anti-Semitic shit on, right? And the basic principle here, and they're refusing to fight over U.S. aid, even though it's a violation of the Constitution and stuff. Andrew Johnson was impeached over some violating some patronage rules with hiring practices in I forget what federal department. People made principled arguments of why he ought not be allowed to do that, but it wasn't about violating the patronage rules. He was trying to put people in place who would sabotage Reconstruction.
Right.
This stuff always sounds corny and rules-based when you describe it in the abstract.
Right.
But when you talk about it in what he's literally trying to do, Nixon was trying to assume dictatorial powers for himself by taking political control of the DOJ, right? That's what Trump is doing.
Right.
He's basically conquered New York City by ratatouilleing the mayor to be mean to immigrants.
Right. But when Nixon did all that, though, it was still, even with as crazy as everything was and as crazy as Nixon was and all the bad shit that had happened in the state of the country and how racist so many things were and all kinds of that shit, it still was when all that came out, it was, a death knell for Nixon eventually. You know what I mean? You couldn't survive that. Where it's with Trump, how many things has he already survived? And he's getting every single one has emboldened him further. And it's now they just do the Nixon shit, like we said earlier at the top of the show, just in broad daylight in front of everybody and dare anybody to do anything about it.
Yeah.
You know?
And the guy who worked for Nixon left and started Fox News to make sure they have an alternative news source to make sure there'd never be public pressure to make him president resign over shit like this ever again. And it seems like it's worked.
Like a charm.
Yeah. So, but this is I hate being corny about this stuff, but one, the founders fucked up because the founders did not like political parties. They thought there would not be political parties.
Right.
So they thought Congress and the executive branch and the judicial branch would stand up for their own power, and maybe they will because those DOJ lawyers resigning with all those people who clerk for the Supreme Court, their audience for that is threefold. It's the public, right, to make clear there's an emergency, some crooked shit's going on. It's trying to give Democrats political ammunition that they're not using to push back against this shit. And it's also the Supreme Court, their former friends and bosses, to be look what you did.
Yeah, I saw an interview with the New Yorker with one of maybe the head of the ACLU, the lawyer over there that's in charge, and he was saying that he was, and I don't share this, but also I'm law dumb and he's not, obviously, that he was still somewhat optimistic about judicial future of some of these cases and the lawsuits and stuff. And they brought up, like, what even with this compromised Supreme Court, and his whole thing was like, look, Clarence Thomas, sure, he's a complete ideologue or whatever, but even some of the other conservatives, like, basically that they care enough about their own position of power and what they are supposed to do and represent to just give it all up, even for the guy who, whose ring they kiss all the time. It's like that in their heads, they're like, no, we have real power, the Supreme Court. It's like, I don't care if he's the president. He's supposed to, that their egos alone and where they position themselves mentally in the hierarchy of everything would end up being a buffer against them just making Trump a king, essentially, was the argument he was trying to make, And
they did, the way they wrote like, well, the decision made Trump above the law. It's like, well, sort of, which says that, like, if it's for a public purpose instead of a private purpose, or however they phrase it. But
it has to be interpreted every time, right? Like,
the ultimate power still rests with them to whether or not the president can be prosecuted. It's not that the president can't be prosecuted. Okay, but like, so I'd much rather have a Democrat in office that we can shit on for not being progressive enough for a lot of reasons. But like I hate being corny and cringy, but like norms are cringe, but they're also good.
Yeah,
like, I don't know how to say that. Like it's like the hard part of the norms conversation is like when Democrats were in the majority during Biden administration, they're like, well, we can't get rid of the filibuster because we're going to want these minoritarian rules in place when we're in the minority, and then now they're in the minority and they're not really using them that much.
Right.
Like I don't understand why they didn't do like 100 hours of talking filibusters to keep RFK from taking control of Health and Human Services. Right. It's pretty frustrating. He would have gotten there eventually as long as Republicans pushed through, but Ted Cruz once read Green Eggs and Ham for like 24 straight hours on the floor to stop Obama from like spending $20 on school lunch or something. So like I don't.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't want to be cringe, and politicians are supposed to be the cringe ones so we can make fun of them. But they're not being cringy enough. They're not talking about public integrity and the public people's trust. They're not doing it. So why are they making me do it?
Right.
Like contrary to public opinion, people are talking about whether or not we have free and fair elections in 2028 and 2026 or whatever. But like that's not even really the point of all this stuff. Like civil society comes before free and fair elections. We're really talking about an environment where we're going to have looks like we're going to have some form of free and fair elections without any sort of civil society. That's basically where we're headed, which is upside down. I remember like back when they were trying to set up the government in Iraq, and I was reading some experts who work in that field doing that kind of thing, and like they were saying the Bush administration was going too fast because you have to establish civic trust before you have to trust the opposition to not murder you when they take power before the elections have any sort of meaning. Mm-hmm. You got to do stuff like trash collection and a judicial system before you can really even think about having like a parliamentary election. We just skipped all that to fucking be like, wipe our hands of it and be like, okay, we did it, we're done, democracy. And like it's completely like it's weird, man. And I like Kathy Hochul. I know you're watching. Like, fucking fire this motherfucker and make a point of saying why, because it's crooked and Trump administration's corrupt and they're persecuting the citizens of New York by seizing control of their mayor's office in a fucking Department of Justice coup, because that's what's happening and somebody needs to make it clear.
Yeah. If any of you skewers out there have the governor of New York's ear, why don't you clip that out and send it to her? Although, you're right. She's surely watching anyway.
Before we go, I do want to congratulate Elon Musk on surprise dropping a 5-month-old baby, his 13th child that he had with a Nazi-adjacent former porn actress.
That's
so
exciting.
There you go. Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
That'll be a nice addition to the Christmas card. In the future. Well, thank you guys for watching. As always, we appreciate it. Reminder again, come see me on the road. Go to TreyCrowder.com. Check me out. Holler at me. It's fun. It is. If you like this, you'll like that. It's a good time. A lot of skewers on the road, Mark. I get messages for you all the time. It's mostly either just like, oh, we love him, he's so great, or it's like, is Mark okay? Is he doing okay lately?
Yeah.
The mixture of both. But anyway,
thanks, guys.
It's it's the world we live in. But also, if you want more of the show and to support it, you can sign up on Patreon, weeklyskews.com/more, or just go to Patreon and search for my name. Either way works. $5 a month, 2 full-length bonus episodes. Either way, if you keep watching these here editions on Skews Deeds, we'll keep making them, beaming them out to you across the World Wide Web. We appreciate it. Verily, we do. We'll see you in 7 days. Love you. Bye.
Skew.